You know what this show needs? This show needs a theme song. It needs like an intro. I am a big fan of 80s television, right? All the great theme songs back in the day. We could do an entire podcast about that. I am a television theme song nerd, by the way. Give you a little fodder for a future Ask Brent Anything episode. We need a theme song. Not that I don't enjoy talking to you. Hi, how you doing? Good to have you here, by the way, at the beginning of the podcast, but just like kick ass to like come in with a theme song. It's sports time. I don't know, something like that. So any musicians out there, if you have a band, you want to send us a theme song for Syracuse Sports, I'm not going to stop you. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, welcome, friends. So glad to have you here. We've got a fun Monday episode lined up for you. Do you remember Charley Loeb, former Syracuse quarterback, lefty, back in the day? Well, now he trains quarterbacks for QB Country, and two of his clients are Carlos Del Rio-Wilson and Jakhari Williams, who come in the fall as the backup quarterbacks to Kyle McCord. We're going to talk to Charlie about working with those two, how he feels about the Fran Brown era and the electric start it is off to at Syracuse, and so much more. And Charlie was fantastic. I really think you guys are going to enjoy this conversation. A couple of things here at the start of the show that I just wanted to hit on here after the weekend. One is this. I wrote a column about this on syracuse.com, and I hope you can read it. Yep, Brent still writes columns sometimes. So check that out on syracuse.com. But what I wrote about was the possibility that Kadary Richmond could return to Syracuse. Was at Syracuse, of course, 2020-21 season. Was a player that just stood out physically. He had the 6'6" guard out there, led the team with 46 steals, and it really sparked a lot of conversations among Syracuse fans about who should be in the backcourt. The minutes that he played, Jim Boeheim arguing with me, with sports radio callers, with people about the minutes that Kadary was getting. He questioned his ability to play more than about 25 minutes a game, which I still think was nonsense. And Jim settled on Kadary backing up Joe Girard. And Joe Girard went on to be somebody who ended up in the top three in the history of Syracuse basketball in terms of three-point shooting, went on to Clemson, had that incredible senior year. So maybe Jim ended up in the long run being right about that. But in the weird era we're in, the transfer portal, how players can come and go at will here, Kadary is kind of stuck in this basketball purgatory, right? He had a successful run at Seton Hall. They actually won the NIT this year. He had like 21 points, 13 rebounds in that game. All first team Big East player, but he's not quite on the NBA level yet. He's really got to work on his shot to get to that next level at the NBA. But man, the guy can bulldoze over players. He can get to the rack. He can rebound. And I think he would be the missing piece for Syracuse at guard. Dakota Lafew did not work out. He went to Georgia, got the NIL payout that he was looking for at Georgia. By the way, on that, guys, it's not that Syracuse couldn't pay what Lafew wanted and give him the NIL money he was seeking. They just chose not to, from what I understand. Different players. I mean, we're talking about college free agency here, but different players have different rates, and they just saw Lafew as somebody they didn't want to invest the money that he was asking for, which, that's the market. That's how you play it these days. Richmond would be worth it. Now, Richmond is being sought after by everybody. He's the number one recruit in the portal, according to ESPN. St. John's really wants him, and Rick Pitino, Duke, Kentucky, Florida State, Oklahoma. I mean, there is a long list of suitors for Kadary Richmond. He is going to have no shortage of options. But I know he wants to play close to home. That's why he left Syracuse in the first place to go to Seton Hall. He wants his mother to be able to see him. So Syracuse has that going for him. If he came back here, Alan Griffin initially recruited him. Two Brooklyn guys. Can you use that advantage? Are there other advantages that Syracuse could use to their benefit? This is all about connections, right? The portal is all about having a prior relationship with these players. Not always. Sometimes it's just a big bag of NIL money and playing time. Those things are important too. But I think when you look at the guard room at Syracuse, right? They went after Lafew, who is a 6'5" scoring guard, could stop and pop from three, can get in the paint, talented player. It's interesting that his head coach is now on the Syracuse coaching staff, and he couldn't convince him to come here. And again, that's his choice. He went to Georgia. But look at the guard room at Syracuse right now. You could pair Richmond with J.J. Starling. You've got a sharpshooting freshman coming in Elijah Moore. You've got Juan Carlos, who Syracuse just got from Hofstra. He is kind of described as a pass-first guy, has a terrific assist-to-turnover ratio. Not really somebody who looks to score, but can he take on the starting point guard role? That's still a question. Chance Westry is still a question. We have not seen him fully healthy at Syracuse. And everything I heard about Westry when he was healthy was this was a guy who was going to get on the court, make an impact, and play. If Syracuse is okay with that, great. But we don't know. And he's got an injury history. And, of course, you have Kyle Cuff Jr. still on the roster as well, who has speed, can stop and pop and shoot the three. But, again, is he somebody that can take on bigger minutes and command the position? We are in an era where you're building one-year teams, and Syracuse has not made the NCAA tournament in 3 years. And I understand the circumstances, coaching change, everything, and there was a COVID year in there, and it was weird. But bottom line is they've not made the tournament for 3 seasons. That is an eternity by Syracuse basketball standards. And I feel like if you have a chance, and we're not talking about a Lloyd Christmas, you're telling me there's a chance. If you have an opportunity to get in a room and talk to Kadary Richmond and he will listen to you, I feel much better that you took the shot. You tried to put him in that lineup to build the best possible roster you could have in these one-year deals that you're building. That's the game today. Like it or not, that is the game in college basketball today. Then I think Syracuse has to take that shot. Do I ultimately think they're going to get Kadary Richmond? No. Do I think they have a chance? Do I think they're in the maybe department? Yes, I think there is an in there. I think they can have that conversation, and I know how the LaFew situation worked out, but guys, you just got to trust me. They do have the NIL money to get Kadary Richmond if they've got to go that far. Are they going to outbid Duke or Kentucky or some of these teams? Maybe not. But sometimes it's not about how much you spend, it's what you spend in addition to what you promise in terms of playing time, atmosphere, comfort, development for the pros, all those things, right? So an intriguing question to start off the week for sure. The other thing I wanted to mention here before we get to our conversation with Charlie Loeb, man, the Syracuse women's lacrosse team just can't beat Boston College. That is 6 straight wins for BC over Syracuse. ACC championship game over the weekend. Syracuse starts off the game with a 5-1 lead. BC makes a defensive adjustment, and Syracuse could not handle it. They got outscored 14-3 from that point. BC wins 15-8. BC was all over Syracuse. An aggressive defense, double-teaming Emma Ward, double-teaming some of Syracuse's best offensive players. Syracuse couldn't handle the defensive pressure from Boston College. BC had excellent stick work, got after it versus Syracuse. And I'm just wondering here when Syracuse can beat this team, because they're inevitably going to meet again. There is a mental block there with this team. You could see it yesterday. The commentators on ESPN mentioned it. Anybody that was watching this game could just see Syracuse melt down. You could see a more confident team. BC was winning all the 50-50 balls, getting after it, and it was almost like they were twisting their mustache like, ha-ha, you have fallen into our trap once again. I still think there's a lot. I think Kayla Traynor is a great coach, and I think was a spectacular choice to take over the program. And ultimately, I will continue to say this, is going to win a national championship or two at Syracuse, because that's all there is left to do for this program. They've done everything else. They've won the ACC. They did it this year, regular season, number 1 seed in the tournament. It's been since 2015 when Kayla Traynor was a player that they've won the ACC tournament, which who cares winning the ACC tournament? I think winning the ACC regular season is actually a better accomplishment than that. But in this case, it's who you lost to. This is a nemesis. This is Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. This is Tom and Jerry. I'm using a lot of cartoon references. I get that. But just think of the thorn in the side, the nemesis that Boston College has been to Syracuse. And they're going to meet again. We all know that the tournament's going to come around and there's going to be Syracuse and there's going to be Boston College and they're going to meet again. What is it going to take for the Orange to overcome this mental block to beat this team? Because it's not talent. Syracuse dominated draw controls. They have a terrific goalie. They have offensive talent. We mentioned Emma Ward and Emma Tyrell and Natalie Smith and Maddie Baxter. They have speed at midfield. They have a great defense. They have one of the better goaltenders in the game, and Delaney Schweitzer, as I mentioned, Bianca Chevrolet, great defenders. What I think is a great coaching staff. They have it all there. But there's just something about Boston College that creates this mental block. And they even got off to a 5-1 lead. The ESPN commentators were talking about how motivated Syracuse was to beat BC. But there's just something about those Eagles when they get on the field and things start falling apart that Syracuse just can't run, or in this case, fly with the Eagles. So we'll see if that changes, because I'll say this. The spot you want to lose to Boston College, and they lost to him in the regular season too, don't forget, is there. You got another kind of, you're almost in the lab in the ACC tournament, and you can dissect that, figure out what went wrong, and be ready when it counts the most, right? It stings to lose to BC 6 times in a row. It stings that Boston College has your number, all these things. My question is, what does Kayla Traynor take from this? What does this team take from this and learn from it? Because guys, they're going to meet him again. It's going to happen in the tournament. I cannot feel more strongly about that prediction. So what do you learn from this? What do you learn from the lab, if you will, to go forward and finally beat Boston College? Because Syracuse is not going to get that one final thing left. The only thing left for this program, and it is a credit to Syracuse when I say, wake me up when they win a national championship, because that's all they have left to do. They've accomplished everything else in the sport. Charley Loeb. Man, we had fun. Emily Leiker and I had a conversation with Charlie about coaching quarterbacks, Syracuse's backup quarterback situation. He had a really interesting story about how he came to work with Jakhari Williams, the incoming freshman quarterback at Syracuse. You're going to hear all about him, what those two are working on, and Charlie's thoughts on the revival of Syracuse football under Fran Brown. What do you say we get to that? Charley Loeb here on Syracuse Sports. Well, Charlie, it's great to catch up with you. And in your time since leaving Syracuse, you're still involved with quarterbacks. You're still involved with football. Tell me about QB Country and the work you're doing with them.
Yeah, so QB Country is an organization. We train quarterbacks really from youth all the way through the pros. This recent draft prep class, in fact, we had Drake May, Bo Nix, Carter Bradley, Devin Leary, a couple of those guys getting drafted. But obviously, like, the foundation of what we do is really with the youth and high school guys, train them up, mechanics, techniques. That's the biggest thing that we do on the field. But obviously, we do some things in the classroom and out too. So for us, that's the big part of our training. And it's been a real pleasure to be able to work with these guys.
So we know you work with both Carlos Del Rio-Wilson and Jakhari Williams, who Carlos has been here a couple of years now, and then Jakhari is about to come in. I guess just how did both of those guys get in touch with you, and how did you start training them?
Different stories, actually. So I talk about my time of quarterback training guys and with Quarterback Country the past 5 years. I've never reached out to any guy. It's been, we have, whatever, online, easy way for people to sign up. It's the same as everybody else. Social media, there's a mobile app, blah, blah, blah. Jakhari, I actually was on Twitter watching video of a camp. I think it was like an MVB camp down here. And I saw this kid that I saw him throwing. This is, I think, his 9th grade year. And I said, this kid is so talented, but it's so mechanically poor that there's no way he works with a guy. Like, that's always the fear on social media. You don't want to go and like take somebody else's guy and work with. I said, this kid is so talented, but he's so bad at his mechanics that there's no way he works with a guy. So I reached out, I was like, hey, you don't work with a quarterback trainer. You need to come train with me or something like that. And he was like, yes, sir, I'll be there.
All right.
Awesome.
So easy enough there, huh?
He showed up, and we've been working since. And I won't say this him now. He's mechanically, he posted some videos, I don't know, yesterday if you saw him. It wasn't with me. He was throwing with tight end. Y'all got Jamie Trimble. And he was looking great. So really, really proud of where he's come. And then Carlos, obviously an older guy. Once I started working with him, he was, I know he originally went to Florida. I think I coached him actually maybe in a camp or two while he was still in high school. But when you coach camps, it's not like you're really teaching people. Really, you're just putting them drills for whatever camp or exposure or video they want for them. And then we did. Last year was his first year at Q's.
Correct.
Last year was his second year.
The second year, right?
Second year. First year, I guess, really playing for them. So right before last year, I want to say about this time, May, before you reported up for summer camp, we were able to get some work in over the 2 weeks. And with him, obviously a super talented, athletic athlete, ability to do about anything that you want him to do. I think the biggest thing that we kept working on was kind of making him feel comfortable within that offense. And obviously it might be a little bit of the same deal because you have a new offense in play, but I think from what I've heard early on, he feels very comfortable with what he's doing, a little bit maybe more familiar. And I think with a quarterback, a huge thing is just clarity with the goals. I feel like he's got a lot of clarity with that. Sometimes if you have a play with 22 options, you're like, whoa, what's the end goal?
Right.
Like, is it which one of these? And then when you have a play and it's like, hey, we're doing this to do that, like, got it, like that works. And I think he feels that way a little bit, and I think that's always builds confidence.
Charlie, let me go back to Jakhari for a little bit here. You see talent. You're like, man, I want to work with a kid like that. So when you get him in there, what do you do with him at QB country? What are the skills you work on? What are the things you give him to do to work on his own? How do you round out a talented player like that mechanically?
First off, you take him in and you can't coach him right away. That's kind of the biggest thing. You take them in and you have to see how are they operating just naturally. You don't want to say natural because they've been coached by somebody along the way, right? But how are they operating at the current time? If they, from whatever diagnostics you want to use, from on the run, in the pocket, movement within the pocket, movement outside the pocket, you just need to observe. You need to see how they're moving, what they do naturally. And like anything, you're going to see their weaknesses and the strengths, and they're going to do some things maybe a little bit different than you would coach, and some things maybe similar. And with everything, there's a pro and there's a con to it. So most things aren't all good or all bad the way that guys mechanically do things. So what you want to do is you just want to see where are you going to start the foundation of your training? Are they in a spot where you are revamping and reteaching because that's a big build, or are you more correcting what they're already doing? That's a bit what you would do probably with older athletes. They have seasons to get ready for it. It's hard to relearn a skill set completely anew without a lot of time devoted and also a lot of buy-in by the athlete. You're going to have really talented athletes that are really good at what they do, and if they've done it for 15, 20 years of their life one way, you're going to have a hard time probably convincing them, hey, we need to do it differently. Jakhari was a really good time because physically he was super developed, athletic kid, could do everything that you would ask him to do, way more than I athletically could do, but he also was young enough that we were able to not really fix what he already did, but kind of start from the ground up and mold him into what we know of today being the latest and greatest in mechanics. So he's kind of that model. And he's taking it super well. And basically we institute drill sets that they're going to do with us that are going to encourage their mechanics to improve. And then you try to give them as much off field and away from you homework that's going to keep reinforcing those good drills, because they go with their team, they go with their 7-on-7 program, they go practice alone. Your goal is you want them to be reinforced with those mechanics. And for a lot of athletes, the last thing I want Jakhari Williams to be doing is thinking about his throwing motion during fall practice this year. That would be an absolute nightmare, because now he's worried about his throwing motion and he's throwing beautiful spirals to the defense. Like, that's a huge issue, you know? So we need him thinking about, oh, that's the worst cornerback on the field. I get to pick on him. Oh, that's my best receiver. How do I get a one-on-one with him? Those type of strategy things are where his head needs to be. And then you hope the mechanics kind of hold up once the bullets start flying.
When you say like his mechanics stood out as being poor and something that needed to be fixed, like freshman year and around when he was 14, 15, maybe, was it like throwing motion? Was it like his drop back? Like what really stood out, and like what, I guess, did you set out to fix right away with him?
So quarterback, or let's say this, talent, especially in the quarterback position, is generally seen through the superlatives. How fast can a guy run? How high can he jump? How hard can he throw? Right? Those are like superlatives. You see a guy, Joe Milton, he can throw the ball 90 yards, literally 90 yards.
Wow.
Lamar Jackson runs a 4.4, right? These are superlatives. They're incredible. The thing about it, though, is the quarterback position, that's how we view talent. How it is actually going to be rewarded within gameplay is different. I talk about the race that you're going to run as a quarterback. The majority of races you run as a quarterback are evading people within the pocket to make throws. The pocket is about 3 to 4 yards deep and about 4 yards wide. So if I'm in a foot race for somebody for 100 meters, the guy that's fastest wins. If I'm in a foot race against a guy for 4 yards, it becomes about technical movements and angles. So it's like a boxer boxing a guy, right? You're constantly trying to create an angle on your opponent that he can just not get within reach of you, but you're still in the ability to remain in a offensive position. Your eyes are downfield. You have the ability to rotate and throw, just as a boxer would, right? You would never not want to be seeing his opponent. You would never not want to be able to throw a punch. But simply running away from that opponent wouldn't do him any good. That's where you see athleticism starts to get downgraded if we become good at these abilities, right? That's the technical aspect of quarterbacking. Think of Tom, think of Peyton, these guys that, you know, they're tremendously good at these type of things. That's what led to a long, successful career. Now, modern quarterbacks is like, well, those two guys maybe did not have that superlative speed, athleticism. Imagine I have a guy that does have that, and then he can just learn how to move within the technical confines of the pocket. Well, you start getting really excited, right? That's what I saw with Jakhari. And then the same with the throwing, right? I see a guy that throws the ball 90 yards in an actual gameplay. I don't know how that plays out very often, right? Like, I'm not sure how many times you're going to have the protection to drop back and throw it 90. But we get extremely rewarded in the position just for more than anything, consistency and accuracy. The ball being consistently where it needs to be at the right time, you get super rewarded. You see some guys, Peyton's a great example. I don't know if he ever threw a spiral, right? He literally just threw, ducks all the time. But the ball is where it needed to be at the right time. And you were rewarded more at this position, specifically, I would say, at the college level, modern days, where we do see a lot of perimeter screens and quick game happening, RPO. And, you get rewarded more with that. And what I saw in Jakhari was, well, he has a strong arm. He's very fast. Can I create that consistency that we need on these passes to be able to play short and intermediate passes consistently, quickly? And then can we move technically inside the pocket? And those were things that I knew he was young enough to learn and far and away enough athletic to do.
Charlie, I'm curious your advice, probably more for Carlos than Jakhari. Jakhari's a freshman, and he's going to have to learn a lot on the fly, earn his keep here a little bit. But Syracuse clearly has a starting quarterback. They brought in from the portal in Kyle McCord from Ohio State. So Carlos, I think, goes into the situation knowing he's the backup. What kind of advice can you give him on that? You did that at Syracuse. You have a lot of experience being behind a talented quarterback like Ryan Nassib back in your day. Now you're working with him not only mechanically, But what's your advice on how they handle things mentally and just being ready to go at a moment's notice and those things that a backup quarterback has to know?
Yeah, I think the big thing with Carlos and any backup right now, especially with the way that the modern era of transfer, the portal, all of that being available, is I continue to tell these guys the biggest investment you can make is going to be within yourself. Is you need to continue to develop your skill sets mentally and physically, and make yourself as a valuable of an asset as possible. Because opportunity is not what you need to be striving for almost. Once you're inside a close enough range that you could potentially be playing on the field. So by that, I mean, if you're a quarterback, say that whatever they call it now, the power 4 level, you're on the roster, you're within the first, second, third string. For you to say, oh, I'm going to seek better opportunity, transfer to X school, Y school, Z school, to continue to do that, you're going to continue to have some guy that potentially is higher rated or evenly rated with you that's also going to be being recruited and being brought in by that school. So I don't think that's the answer. I think people are trying to find the perfect spot where there's no competition. Well, if it's a perfect spot, there's going to be competition by nature. If there's a Division 12 school and somewhere out in the remote woods somewhere with terrible education, right? Well, they may not have many quarterbacks. You might be able to go there easy and win the job. But if you want to go to these premier spots, it's not going to be about finding the perfect one at the perfect time. It's going to be about developing yourself physically to a point where you are an incredible player. And when that opportunity does occur, you seize it. And just like anything, we have a lot that we control in that formula, but there's a lot that we don't control. And that's the facts of life, right? So when it's our time, you got to be ready. And if your focus is anywhere other than making yourself as skilled and as ready as possible, then you're wasting time in the wrong direction.
When Carlos came to you last summer, I guess, were there certain things that he was asked by that year's coaching staff to like improve on or work on? I know you mentioned just getting more comfortable with the playbook and stuff like that and in the offensive scheme, but had he been given like certain things like, hey, we need you to improve XYZ before the 2023 season?
The talks always were, I need to get more consistent and I need to learn the playbook and know where the ball needs to go. That was always kind of his words to me. I never communicate with the staff before I was working with Carlos. I did speak with the staff a little bit afterwards, but that was always kind of how he saw the situation, and I think that's what he knew he needed to work on.
We've talked about both these guys now, and I think obviously Carlos has a leg up because he's a veteran and he's been here and he's been kind of the backup guy for a few years now. But you think Jakhari as a true freshman can kind of challenge for that backup role and maybe see some time on the field this fall?
I definitely think it would be nice for him to see time. I know that should be a goal of his. I think it gets tough quarterbacking a little bit. I always say this: practice reps are great, but practice reps are isolated in terms of like environment. I work with another quarterback. He's D1 guy. He's incredibly talented. He's a redshirt sophomore this rising year, and his coach said we were working out some things. His coach said, "Man," he says I'm too aggressive right now, and I said, "Aggressive is good, right?" What you're lacking is the context of the situation. In practice, if you're too aggressive, it's always 1st and 10, or it's all whatever it is. The ball's always on the 40. You throw a pick, the ball comes back to the 40. You throw a touchdown, great. The ball comes back to the 40, and you run the next rep. That's how practices are structured oftentimes. In a game, the game dictates when to be aggressive. If it was 1st and 10, start of the game, I throw a 40-yard bomb, or if anybody were to throw a 40-yard bomb when we were supposed to be throwing something underneath, yeah, well, coaches can be pretty dang mad at us. And we know that. We know that by nature. We don't have to think about that twice. It's like a kid. They know what's going to get them in trouble and what's not. If it's 3rd and 15 and we go out there and we're aggressive in the 3rd quarter, it's like, well, maybe that was the time for us to be a little bit more aggressive, right? And there's a flow to the game that dictates to us when we should be playing. And that's what competitors feel. And I think what quarterbacks lose a lot once they get from the high school to college level is they start getting more practice reps. They start getting bigger, faster, stronger. They start getting smarter about the game, but they start losing that flow of competition because they don't understand or they don't get the reps at being in a game and the back and forth nature of it, and when to push harder and when to be a little more conservative. That comes with just being in game situations. And high school is great at it. They have 9th grade ball, they got JV ball, they got varsity ball. You might play your whole career and you're still getting game experience against like opponents, really. College is so tough because you can go to college, be as talented as can be, and sit 2, 3, 4 years, and you're not going against games. So you may be great in a vacuum, but what is your decision making like once you're in a game environment? Well, we did get to train that. So I think it would be tremendous if Jakhari got reps this year, but that is a big jump, right? Like going from that level to that level. I think to have to play extended, meaningful reps, man, you might any 18-year-old. I'm not saying it's not impossible or not possible. You see it happen, but you better have. I think the times that we do see it happen, usually the supporting cast is just that much stronger than the opponents that they kind of help the quarterback float to success. We see a lot of standout freshman quarterbacks from Alabama or wherever it might be, right? And it's not because obviously they've had a good running quarterback of recent, but it's not necessarily because their guys are so much better than the other guys. Look at the great quarterbacks in the league right now. They're from all over, right? It's not like they're only coming from one school. So it's just showing that, well, if you have a young guy, you're going to need other guys to help him float to the top. And, Cuse, I think, is in a situation where it's a bit more competitive and level playing field with their opponents in the conference. So I think it could be tough to be relying on that freshman like that. So you would definitely hope that Carlos is in a position where he's feeling really good to run the offense, because he is potentially one snap away. And I'm not saying Jakhari doesn't take that spot, but it would definitely be competitive. And if I were a coach, I know I'd want my upperclassmen to be the guys that I want coming through there.
Charlie, zooming out a little bit here, we have seen Fran Brown come in and just electrify Syracuse football with the recruits he's brought in, with the transfers he's brought in, as noted, Kyle McCord right there at the top of that list. Spring football, I've never seen anything like it in terms of the buzz and the interest that fans have in this program. What's been your view as an alum of what Fran Brown's been doing, and what are some of your fellow alums and guys that you played with and kept in touch with saying about what they're seeing up here with what Fran Brown's doing with the program?
So Fran Brown got the job. When did he get the job?
Early December.
Yeah.
Early December. Man, it might have been late December, probably later in the month. Like I woke up or maybe, late December or early January. I think Jakhari was still committed. Because he committed before Fran, and then I woke up one morning, and it was like a Sunday morning, and there was like a text like from 5 a.m. I was like,
Oh, boy.
"Hey, Charlie, this is Fran, Coach Fran Brown. Just want to thank you for all you do with our quarterbacks. Keep doing what you're doing, developing the next generation," something like that. I saw the text, and I was just like, "Is this really Fran Brown?" I was like, this is a fake text from like one of my buddies. Like, I had to check with somebody. I'm like, "Hey, like, who pranked me here?" They were like, "It might have been Justin." It was like, no, that's really his number. That's him. You're good. So I sent him a text back like, "Oh yeah, thanks, Coach. Like, I'll keep working hard, I guess." I was like, "Geez,
That's great."
If Fran Brown has gotten to me on the list of alums, that guy's working really, really hard. Uh, to be honest, you know. So I think I hear it from my buddies, just like you said. He's done a tremendous job at outreach. I've never had as many of my buddies be so excited and ask me, "Hey, what game can we go to this year?" The buzz is incredible. Like I said, Justin Pugh's a guy that obviously big alum for us, first round pick, great NFL career still going to this day, and he's been a huge mouthpiece and just saying, "Man, I've never seen this much energy in the dome." He was there for the spring game. And I'm sure it wasn't full, you know, but the people that were there, I think the excitement is really tangible. With the guys that they've brought in, the recruiting class, there just seems to be an energy and a bit of a swagger about what he's doing. And it seems incredible. And us, you know, old heads on the outside, fans, I feel like we see it and we know it's there, and we just can't wait for the season to happen. And then I have quite a few friends that have been involved with what do they call it nowadays? The NIL portion of it, right?
The SU Football NIL collective.
Yes, yeah. So you know, my buddy Zach Spain, he's a lawyer. He's been involved with that, obviously, former athlete. Doing a lot with them. So everybody feels like they have a role a bit, almost like I'm a quarterback trainer in Georgia. I feel like I have a role with Syracuse football. Like that's pretty cool. I think my buddy Zach, who's a lawyer in New York, he feels like he's got a role in football. Justin feels like he has a role in football. So these guys now that maybe we were fans, but not sure how we could help the program from the outside, you know, we had that feel. Now, I mean, we feel a part of it. I think that's an incredible testament to him, what he's done.
This is more of a looking back, a reflection question for you. But since you mentioned how loud the dome was at the spring game, what was the loudest moment in the dome during your career?
Loudest moment in the dome. Man, there's some really good moments. One of the best moments I remember was we had a Friday night game versus Louisville on ESPN. I think they had Teddy Bridgewater, and we beat them like 44-14 or something. The place was like totally packed. It was just super loud. It was an incredible game. We were on a high there. It was great. Another great game. I think it was like the same environment. I want to say it was a Friday night game versus West Virginia with Geno Smith.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah, we smacked the tar out of them. That was fantastic. You know, heck, I think I even got some reps that game. So, you know, it was great. You know, anytime we got to smack West Virginia, it was always fun. So, yeah, you know, those are some big ones. Man, some good some good memories there.
It was great to catch up. We really appreciate your insight into what you're doing with Carlos and Jakhari, and hearing about the buzz building with the alums, and fascinated to see what you're doing with QB country. I really enjoyed it. I hope we can catch up down the road and do this again, but we appreciate you coming on with us today, and best of luck and success to you. Still getting to work with quarterbacks, like you said. Nothing wrong with that, and always great to catch up with you, my friend.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, guys. I'll be better groomed next time.
Looking good as always, Charlie. Looking good.
I appreciate it.